The burning house. In the post-World War II period, after the atomic bombs had been dropped and the Cold War had begun, 5 major developments began to occur with the intention of ending the promissory note for all humanity that is enshrined in the founding of the U.S. and secure the eventual enslavement of all of humanity. These 5 developments collectively are the burning house. Number 1, the introduction of the rock, drug, sex counterculture. 2, the rise of the global exploitative financial empire. 3, the rise of the ecology movement and limits to growth. 4, the endless wars. 5, the rise of the post-industrial society and the poverty pimp state. The rise of the ecology movement and limits to growth. In the same period that Dr. King was completing his doctoral dissertation, leading members of the titled aristocracy of Europe created the World Wildlife Fund. Out of this came the beginnings of the ecology movement and limits to growth movement. The old imperial forces that had brought Hitler to power began the ecology movement to attack economic development, especially in poor nations. The idea was to stop all scientific and technological progress. Part of the success of the campaign against science was the fact that from the time of the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Japan, most of the world was growing up in the shadow of nuclear war at any time. The fear created by this contributed to the growth of an anti-science, go back to nature orientation. And this fear contributed to the creation of the dead-end nihilistic philosophies that also assisted the growth of the rock, drug, sex counterculture. Today we see the culmination of this ecology movement in the drive to depopulate the planet through the banning of carbon emissions. 4, the endless NeoColonial wars. Instead of developing the world after World War II, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt had intended, there was a rise of proxy wars between East and West to stop communism, which disguised the return of earlier European colonialism as modern neocolonialism. This began with Korea and other interventions, but really took off with Vietnam. Instead of fighting all over the world to resurrect modern colonialism, under the guise of fighting communism, the United States should have been using its economic power to develop itself and the world. These endless wars have continued since and are a key pillar for keeping the global speculative financial system in control of most of the world. Dr. King accurately called out the Vietnam War in this way.
Because my conscience leaves me no other choice. I join you in this meeting because I am in deepest agreement with the aims and work of the organization which has brought us together, clergy and laymen concerned about Vietnam.
Number 5, the rise of the post-industrialism, information technology, and poverty pimp state. In the interest of economically looting the world, the emerging new post-World War II global imperial financial system was based on deindustrializing as the means of shifting the world from economic development to the exploitation of cheap labor. The more developed parts of the world became less developed, and the less developed parts of the world became the new slave plantations of empire. In the United States, without increasing productive jobs, employment shifted to the service sector. One of the expanding service sectors became the poverty pimp sector. The destruction of the lack of a sense of the future, the drugs, the collapsing culture, the lack of a driving productive economy created a growing poverty sector with its codependent administrative overhead. Since real economic development is outlawed by the speculative financial system, increasing reductions in the living wage and the growth of the poverty pimp sector has been the main demoralizing vector within the United States. The politics of this process of the incestuous relationship between poverty and the administrative bureaucracy has also been supported by the international financial system politically. As a result, many of our major cities have been politically taken over by the dynamic of increasing poverty, drugs, homelessness, gangs, and the codependent administrative bureaucracy. This is set to expand dramatically coming out of the COVID-19 crisis with the introduction of a central bank-controlled universal income that will universalize this dependency on the poverty pimp state, preparing the way for the planned culling of most of the population. Alongside of this is the substitution of information and control of information for production. Information becomes its own commodity, which begins to be used to control the society and oversee a global economy from anywhere in the world. With this comes the surveillance state, merged between the IT giants and the intelligence agencies who use the IT giants' information storage capabilities. It is also this kind of information processing and control which is keeping the international banking system and the hedge funds at the center of the international financial system from totally crashing. Then, with the crash comes the Great Reset, shifting control even more so to the central banks and their universal income scheme. If we take these non-productive net drain areas of the real economy and combine them, we have the current correlation of political power that is opposing the development and future of the nation. This is the burning house. The burning house is the drug trade, the post-industrial society, the gangs, the growing human trafficking sex trade, the financial system, the continuing bailouts, the increasing slave labor, unemployment, poverty, homelessness, the military-industrial complex of endless wars, and the genocidal environmental agenda. How then do we put out the fire and rebuild the house?